Hello, if you've been here before, welcome back. If not, hi, my name is David. I make videos talking about media that I want to talk about. This is my reading wrap-up for the month of April, all the books that I read in the month of April. I'm joined again here today by Xiaomei, and joining us this month is our new addition to our family, Hey Lily Kyoko. Yeah, they're here to join me while I talk about all the books that I read this month. I read a total of, I think it was 10 to 11 books. I think there's an audiobook there that I don't have physically looking at so I can count. So 10 to 11 books that I read this month. I think this was a pretty good reading month. And as usual, I'll cut to me in the past talking about the books in the first half of the month. Alright, I am in the past now. It is middle of April. It's been a very rough month for me. That's fine. The first book that I read was The Love Interest by Cale Dietrich. This is a book that I'm rereading. It was on my shelf since, like, Jesus Christ, late high school, I think. It is a 2.75 out of 5. It's not for me anymore. This was a really good book when I was younger, but is not anymore. It's just because it's not my kind of story. It's about the main character. I also forgot their name. Caden is a nice, capital N. He's working with this organization called the Love Interest something. What was it? Some spy organization that sends two young men and women to attract and romance and get with a prospective famous person who might be important in the future. And what they do to ensure that is they have a nice and a bad. So like a bad boy and nice boy, or a nice girl, bad girl, or something like that. And to ensure that they actually do succeed, whoever loses in the courtship is killed. First of all, this did not age well because it is full of comedy and references that were common in the time that this was published, was in 2016, 2017. So there is at least one, only one, thankfully, reference to Harry Potter, but there is multiple references of Nicki Minaj, because the main character, Caden, really likes Nicki Minaj. So that has not aged well at all. I will have to commend the book because look at its marketing, look how it looks, you know. It says love kills, and there's a tag at the back. It says 2 spies, 1 girl. Whoever gets her to fall in love with him lives. So, you know, big stakes of, you know, trying to get who wins. Main character is Caden, and then we have, his name is Dylan, but he calls himself Dill, the bad. I think that, I guess, spoilers for a book that I would not recommend to anyone of my age range. This book is secretly a queer book, which is good, obviously. Because Caden and Dill end up falling in love with each other over their competition of their love interest, this girl who might become a super famous, super prolific inventor named Juliet. And they're gays, and they love each other, which is a big surprise. I remember reading this for the first time years ago and being floored that this was a gay. I think the concept is interesting in terms of this is a spy organization that hedges its bets to get the love interest to fall in love with one of their agents to spy on them when they grow up. And there are some really good plot beats, but it is just a coming-of-age high school romance packaged in this sci-fi spy thriller thing. There's also like robots, enforcers that are like evil and will kill you. I did not like the ending. The ending felt incredibly rushed. I specifically remember having read it the first time, rereading it again. I'm like, oh yeah, I felt the rush of the last of the ending and how rushed it was. I felt it again this second time around. I did like the characters though. Juliet is a really, really great character, and then like Caden and Dill are like fine. And the main character love interests are just fine. The side characters are pretty good. And it is not a story for me anymore. And so I didn't quite enjoy it, but I wouldn't count it as like the worst book that I've read, one of the worst books this year, because it's like I knew coming in That just wasn't for me anymore. It's not going to stay on my shelf anymore because I got to give it to someone else who might need it. The next book that I read was External Forces by Shannon, which is the second book in the Marrowbone Spells series. Right now it is just a duology. It's just the first 2 books that have come out. I can feel that there might be a third book, but this book was published like 4 years ago or 3-4 years ago. So I don't know if there will be a third book. 2022 was when this was published. I wanted to read this book because I had read the first book, Innate Magic, last year, and this was one of the best books that I read last year. And so when I finished this book, I bought the second book and I only just now got around to it, but absolutely loved this book as well. This series follows Paul Gallagher in an alternate history London. In the first book, it was post-war 1950s. Here it's 1968. 58, sorry. The 1960s, basically. And here there is a magic system where, like, depending on what kind of bone you break on your body, you can do types of magic. This book is set 4 years after the events of the last book, and it's sort of like following up on nascent plot threads that have grown into large plot threads in this book. And I think that, well, okay, so this book is a 4.5 out of 5 in terms of, I, as a fan of the first book, did not quite enjoy this book. But as a technical, intellectual level, this is like a 5-star or like a 4.75 or still pretty high. As a fan of the first book, I did not quite enjoy how some things progressed within the 4 years between the ending of the first book and the start of the second book. I think that, like, my favorite character in the first book, one of my favorite characters was, actually no, my 2 favorite characters in the first book, Thomas and Tanya, were completely shafted in this second book. And Paul is still like an amazing character, but those 2 characters really carried the story for me in the first book, and Thomas was barely there. And then Tanya, who had started a relationship with Paul in the ending of the first book, breaks up with him like a few months before the story starts for like plot reasons, and I did not quite enjoy that, which led to Paul having a different love interest, and I didn't quite vibe with that romance there, but it was not a big part. I mean, it was a big part of the story. I didn't quite enjoy it as a fan of the first book, but how it was written, how it was implemented, fine. It felt realistic in terms of, yeah, it's just how the world, that's just how real life sort of moves. Sometimes things change and stuff like that. It was fine. I do think there were some slight odd pacing issues that I can't quite put my finger on. I'm not exactly sure. Towards the middle of it, it gets a little slower, and then it ramps up and then slows down pretty like steeply, and I'm not much of a fan of that. But overall, the plot of the first book and the second book are just amazing. I really like the plotting that Shannon does in these books. It's amazing. Even if my 2 favorite characters of the first book were not present, the rest of the characters in this book are still amazing, and it's just a really well-written plot, character, conflict. Some, like, this book lends itself to a little bit of whimsy and like lightheartedness, and then it hits you with like some horrifying body horror that I'm like, this could put me out of it, but it's so well implemented, and I really enjoy this book. And it's simply just because it did not reach, it's a sequel. It's a sequel to the first book that I really enjoy, and so it could have reached higher, could have not. I don't know. In Goodreads, at least, I've kept it at 5 stars, but it is a 4.5 emotionally for me. The next book that I finished, which I put in quotation mark because it was an audiobook that I read for a long time, which is The Other, which is Animorphs number 40 by K.A. Applegate, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5. This is covering how the Animorphs discover 2 crash-landed Andalites, one of which is a disabled Andalite, who are trying to hide from the Yerks, the bad aliens. And I really liked it because it had gay Andalites. The 2 Andalites who crashed down are gay, subtextually. Kay Applegate has stated that she really wanted to make them explicitly gay, but because of the censorship during the early 2000s, or yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. She couldn't really do that. But these were definitely homosexual Andalites, and I immediately got that context. Like they use thought speak, and they one Andalite says about the other Andalite, Gaffinalon and what's his name? Martial, that's it. Gaffinalon Martial. Gaffinalon says that wherever they are, whenever they are on the same planet, he can hear Martial's thought speak faintly, but he can always hear him if they're on the same planet. I'm like, that's super, that's gay. That's the homosexuals, and I love that. This also had like some great discussions about disability and ableism, because one of the main characters of the Animorphs, Axe, he is an Andalite as well. He has a very bad attitude towards Mortiel, because Andalites, these aliens, are centaur people with 4 eyes. Like, they have the main eyes and then stalk eyes. They have human bodies. They have horse torso, you know, the centaur, and their tails are sharp, have a sharp blade at the end. And Gaffinalon's tail is, he doesn't have a sharp blade on it, so it's just a normal tail. So he's seen as a feckle, is what they're called, disabled slur to the Andalites. And Axe does not treat him correctly. And this book is in Marco's POV. Marco is definitely the kind of person to push against Axe's ableism, and it's not resolved because it's a very complex cultural thing, but it's definitely like, hey, Axe is really treating him in a bad way, and Marco challenges him, and they have discussions about, you know, this man, this Andalite is disabled, however, he still is worthy of life, obviously. So, you know, really great discussions about disability, and I love the gay subtext. 4.5 out of 5. Next, I read The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, the second book in the Poppy Wars series. I am reading for a read-along hosted by, off the top of my head, I'm filming on my phone, so I can't look it up on my phone, but, you know, we have Coffee Over Apples, Steph, Mel, oh god, I'm so sorry. These are the other people who are hosting the read-along for the Poppy War series that I am reading along with them. We already had the first live show for the Poppy War a month ago, I believe, and then I think we'll have they will have a live show for this book next month. I'm not fully sure. But I read the second book. This is a 4 out of 5 for me. I think it was pretty good. We have Rin, the main character, conscripted into a civil war led by the dragon warlord, because in this fantasy realm, the main country, Nikara, is split into 12, 13? 12, like, states, I guess, with a warlord in each state. I don't know if it's showing. I am completely blocking what I can see. I don't know if it's going to focus anyways. Anyways, 12 states led by a warlord, Rin, who is part of the Psyche, who is like this Suicide Squad-esque division, are trying to find a way to kill the Empress, because the Empress sold their life to the Federation of Mugen, which is the war, the first Poppy War with the other state. Now they find themselves in the middle of a civil war when the Dragon Emperor begins the Dragon Republic that wants to take over Nikara and defeat the Empress, because the Dragon Warlord, the father of Neja, one of Rin's friends from the military academy, promises to Rin that she can kill the Empress, and she wants revenge because the Empress basically sold their life to the Mugens. It continues that Rin carries this series. Like, Rin is such a well-written character. In the first book, she was definitely wanting to talk about the rape of Nanjing and the atrocities that the Japanese did to the Chinese, and then I feel like it kind of got away from her. I can't say for sure, but like, if the first book is so focused on historical retelling, I was reading this book as, what kind of historical retelling is happening here, or is there any in the first place, considering it was there in the first book. I think if you squint, maybe it's about the, I believe there was a civil war right after World War II that led to the rise of communism. That's not exactly happening, but there is a civil war happening, obviously. So I'm not sure exactly, 100%. I do like that this book was more focused on what it was happening because, like I said in the prior reading wrap up, the Poppy War book 1 felt like 3 different books in one, but this one definitely felt like the same book. It's just Rin, Kite, Neja, and the members of the Psyche getting bopped around by the warlord, the dragon warlord of the Dragon Republic, and doing war. And it's just, the entire book is doing war. And honestly, I was a lot happier that this was mostly about war than the Poppy War, which the Poppy War book 1 only was about 50% the Poppy War. You know what I mean? I don't really have any strong emotions for this series yet. Like I said, technically Rin is a really strong character. The fantasy elements are there and good and well implemented. I do feel a little like, oh god, Rin never gets a break. She can never catch a break. But it's not like I am absolutely like terrified for her or feeling for her. I'm just sort of watching her go through emotions, succeed, fail, succeed, mostly fail, sometimes succeed, and it's enjoyable. It's a fun ride. I don't have any strong emotions negatively or positively towards it so far. I'm hoping that the third book definitely lands well, but I don't know yet. I will be reading that in 2 months. The next book that I read was Ink Death by Cornelia Funke, which is the third and final book of the Inkworld trilogy. This is following the events of Inkspell, where Meggie, Mo, and their family are in the Inkworld, and they're trying to defeat the Adderhead, which has become immortal due to him tricking. Meggie and Mo try to trick the Adderhead, but things happen, and now he has stayed immortal, and Mo has to find a way to kill him. And I think that compared to Inkspell, this is a vast improvement. It's definitely more focused in the second book. I think my least favorite part of the second book was a little scattered, a little spread out. But here was definitely a fantasy story about rebelling against totalitarian government. The Adderhead, there's also his brother-in-law that appears, apparently, named the Milksop. We never get his real name. It's just the Milksop. But I think it's really good that they bring in Orpheus. Orpheus is another silver tongue that Dustfinger had met in the beginning of Inkspell that read him back into the Inkworld, into Inkheart. And I really like that he is now in this world because now we have another silver tongue bopping around. So we have Meggie, Mo, Orpheus, and then eventually Darius as well, that can read stuff and have them come to life. But Orpheus is an antagonist, a really strong antagonist too. We get a really good sense of who he is and how vile he is and how scummy he is. And I think he was a great juxtaposition to Mo, to Meggie, to Darius, to the Adderhead as well. Eventually Orpheus and the Adderhead work together towards the very end. And I also like that the daughter of the Adderhead, Violante, who was a important character in the second book, becomes even more important in this third book as well. I really like her inclusion. I feel like she could have been used better. In the other side, I feel like Meggie was shafted here, and I feel like the main focus turned more to Mo, who became the Blue Jay, and Meggie didn't really have to do that much beyond read a few passages. Like the main conflict, the main big moment in the book at the very end is Mo in a castle with Violante, with Dustfinger, with Risa, with the Adderhead, but Meggie is all the way in a different location, and she's not really doing anything. And I just feel like she was shafted. And I feel like the main focus of the first 2 books was Meggie. She was the main character there, and I wanted her to be the main character in this book, but she was had a reduced role, unfortunately, I feel like. And then they also wanted to, like, I totally can see wanting to write a story about how, Meggie and Ferret, who is a character from Thousand Nights, who's brought in Inkworld, in Inkheart, and then is still here. I can totally see a story being told about her and Ferret falling in love, and then things, agendas, events happen. They sort of fall out of love, and accepting that sometimes the person that you think you fall in love with first is not always going to work out, and that's fine. I think that would have been fine. But then we also have, because she can't be with Ferret anymore, now we have this random other guy, Doria, and I feel like Doria's a great character, but I'm also like, we don't need that. If you want to tell this story, make it so that it's okay that you are not in a relationship with anybody, but now it's okay that you're not in a relationship with your first relationship. You have another one waiting for you, and I feel like that's not the best message per se, but I might just be reading into it too much. And I think there was a lot more use of like the fantasy elements here with the silver tongue magic that I was missing in Inkspell. And so I was satisfied with the trilogy, rereading it, finally finished rereading this trilogy, and I'm happy to return it to the library and not touch on it again. Definitely, I wanted to revisit Inkheart because it was such an integral part to my childhood when I was in middle school, and to be able to talk about it. But it was definitely kind of a slog to get through, especially through Inkspell, and I think it should have just stopped at Inkheart. But I do think that being within the Ink world was pretty fun, pretty enjoyable, and it's a good trilogy to read. And like, it's a thick book, so you can definitely be like the child who reads a lot because a big book, and you can feel really good about it. And it's an easy read as well. So I'm glad to finally move on and start reading other books and start reading other. Like I said before, I'm gonna stop rereading some book series so that I can catch up on a huge stack of books that I have yet to read physically that are not part of a series. So I'm gonna wait on that. The next book that I read was Molka by Monika Kim, which is the book of the month pick for April, which is about two characters. We have Daye, Daye or Daye, I'm not fully sure, who works in like an office building. She has a rocky relationship with this rich guy, and then Jun Young, who is a creep, who is a creep who is a goddamn creep. Okay, so Molka is an abbreviation of Molrai Camera, a sneaky camera hidden to capture covert images and videos for voyeurs. And so, from what I've heard, Monika Kim wrote this book because there's a huge epidemic, or was, or has been, an epidemic in South Korea of men putting small cameras in private locations so that they can be voyeurs and look at women in bathrooms, look at women in compromising positions. And most of the time, either they're not even investigated, or if they are investigated, they get off with a slap of the wrist, and no one is ever charged with anything higher than like a few months in jail. And so it's a big. I'm not part of South Korean culture, so I'm not fully sure. I can't say. But at the beginning of this, Monika Kim talks about how it is a problem that has been happening in South Korea as of recent. Molka originated from a 1990 South Korean television show. She says here in the author's note, the quote, Burning Sun scandal in particular dominated headlines in 2019 after journalists discovered a chat room where a number of Korean celebrities had been sharing illicit footage they had been taking of women without their knowledge or consent. In many cases, the women were drugged and raped. And despite the severity of their crimes and the tremendous pain caused to the victims, we watched the various perpetrators have their sentence reduced or suspended by the courts, with the most egregious offender ultimately receiving a prison term of only 18 months. And so Monika Kim wanted to write this story as an expression of anger regarding the injustice that occurs in South Korea to men who help other men be creeps by just saying boys will be boys. That's just fine. That men just like doing that, and it's okay to do that. So there's that. This is a 3.75 out of 5 for me. This was a really interesting horror. I feel like this could be counted as a slow burn because it is following two perspectives of Dayi and Jun who are revolving around each other, mostly without Dayi knowing because Jun is stalking her, but also dealing with the drama and scandal that occurs with Dayi's rich boyfriend who is caught having shared pictures of other women using these Molka cameras. And so I feel like it's a slow burn because it's leading up to that. There is some really fun supernatural elements I will not spoil because it's a new book. It just came out. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I do like that it is a type of supernatural horror that I say we've seen prior, but it's used in a slightly different way than I've seen before, and I really like that. And then the ending I did not quite enjoy, mainly emotionally. Like technically, story-wise, I think it's a fine ending, but I did not personally enjoy the ending because I was like, I'm not satisfied by it. And then like the very last 2 pages made it worth it, but I was still like, I'm not a fan of how this ended. And so it was fine. But similarly to, I guess, to Dragon Republic, I don't have any strong emotions for or against it beyond just I did not like the ending. But I do think that the gore that happens in this book is really good, and I needed more of it, and I needed more horror things happening as well. And also in terms of the supernatural thing that I've seen before, I've seen it before. So I'm like, I'm not surprised so much that it's, it's a ghost. Okay. It's a ghost. And I've seen that before, but the way that it was used was like, okay, it's a ghost, but now it's an ally. Okay. So I was fine with that. In regards to a book of the month this month, I could have also chosen Yesteryear. From what I've heard, it is also a pretty good book, but I wanted to read more horror. I've not been able to read that much horror in this year so far, so I wanted to get another horror, and this was pretty good. This is the last book I'm going to talk about in the past, and it's Among the Brave by Margaret Peterson Haddix, which is the 5th book, yes, of the Shadow Children series. This is following directly after the events of the last book, where Luke/Lee was taken into the home of the barons of his name that he took so he can no longer, because in this world, 3rd children are illegal, so some 3rd children have to run away and pretend to be someone else. His fake identity parents, the Barons, Among the Barons, that's the 4th book, take him in. Probably one of my favorite books of the series so far. Directly after that, after the Barons are killed, all of his other 3rd children friends are trying to figure out what to do. Things are happening, and we follow in the point of view of Trey, one of Luke's friends, in the Hendrickson school. And in the aftermath of the Barons being killed, there is this coup that occurs that shakes up the population police and makes them even more dangerous, but also more incompetent. And Trey has to navigate and try to find a way to save Luke and his friends who have been arrested by the police. And so it's a 3.5 out of 5 for me. I found Trey really annoying at the beginning. I like how, in an attempt to make these characters feel a little different, this is the 3rd new point of view character that we get in this series, because we had Luke for the 1st, 2nd, and 4th books. Nina in the 3rd book did not like her at all, and Trey in this 5th book, in an attempt to make Nina and Trey feel different, Margaret Peterson Haddix tries to add some other thing to the prose. I don't remember exactly what it was for Nina, but for Trey, he has like this really good memory, and he's read a lot when he was growing up with his family. He was the 3rd child, so he's sequestered within the city, so he was never able to leave, and his father had him read a lot, so he every once in a while he has like in his prose a quote from a book that he read, like a statistic, a fact, or something like that. So he's like really smart, and I like that, but he's also super annoying because he's so cowardly and he's so scared. And I get it. I get that eventually his growth will be satisfying to see him where he started to where he is at the end of the book, among the brave. He is the brave. He is probably one of the most brave characters at the end of the book, apparently. But at the beginning, I just did not like it. And I was like, if this is how it begins, I'm scared of how it ends, but at least it ended well enough. Trey and Luke's brother Mark work together to try to find a way to save Luke and his friends, and it's very coincidental that things happen how they happen, in terms of they just happen to stumble upon the resistance and help the resistance survive. And I feel like that's a little too serendipitous in my eyes. I feel like they could have done something with Oscar from the fourth book, but he's not there now. I think he appears in the sixth book. I have two more books to read before I finish this series. And I think it's just a bit too coincidental that I was like, okay, I guess that happens next. Oh, and I guess that happens next after that. But I do like the plot. I think the plot was really interesting, and I feel like a lot of these, again, an issue that I had with the last book, most of these books could have been longer, could have had a bit more things happening. I feel like this, I think, is the longest book so far. It's about 220 pages. Before it was like up to 200 pages. But I feel like there could have been just a few more pages, a few more chapters of things happening to flesh out the world more. But I think for this book at least, it's fine because of how quick everything's happening. It's also a great showcase of how incompetent the government is, and I like that critique in terms of, well, okay, so the coup happens and the population police are taken over by this other general, and I forget his name. He's not memorable whatsoever because he's so cartoonishly evil that I'm like, well, one, this is too close to reality, and two, this feels, it feels cartoonish. It feels cartoonish and doesn't feel like a huge obstacle that you can overcome. And there's no nuance in it. And yeah, there's no nuance in real life either, but I want my sci-fi dystopia to have a little bit more nuance than what's shown. But I did like the nuance of having very strict bureaucracy, having very strict hierarchy, and the individual officers, individual population police are still like scattered and disconnected and have like arguments within and like infighting and stuff like that, and lying to the population about feeding them and not feeding them anything, or feeding them really bad food or something like that. That gives really good critique. But the very top of the pyramid, the main antagonist now, because before in the first four books, it was General Terrace that was like the leader of the population police, and that's like the president, and we need to take down the president. Now he's gone, and it's someone else. And I'm like, this doesn't feel satisfying now. But I will be finishing this series in 2 months as well. That's all the books I read in the past of April, so I will go now to the future. I completely forgot to move them around. You know, I always try to make it look a little cute with how they're moving and stuff. Anyways, the next book that I read in the month of April was The Night Ends with Fire by K.X. Song. This was a book that I had to read for a book club, but unfortunately the book club did reschedule to a time that I could not go to, so I still read it. I did not know that until I started reading it the day of, or like the day after or something. I'm not fully sure. But I still read it, and it was fine. It was a 3.25 out of 5. This is about Mei Lin, this is a retelling of Mulan, and this is about the main character Mei Lin, who instead of being wed off, decides to disguise herself as a man and join the army. And in the army, she learns that she has some, I forget exactly if it's like inherent power or like inherited, or like she has some sort of ability to connect with a god and draw power from that god. That god is the blue dragon, and I think it's connected to the water element. And she has to face off against the general of the army that her country is in a war with. This is the map. 3 different countries in a war with each other, and she's in one country A, and the general in country B is like her, has this power to harness power from a god. His god is the phoenix, so which is why we have the fire. The night ends with fire. I think that the plot was pretty good. I was really surprised at how some things were moving and really interested in where things went. Did like that. But overall, I just found this story kind of boring and not that interesting. Like, they were trying to rewrite Mulan, and that's a noble goal, I would say. However, I think that, like, with Mulan, the interesting thing, to me at least, is that she has this connection. Mulan has a connection with Shang, and Shang only knows Ping, and then that adds a little queer lens to this entire thing. And then he finds out that she is actually Mulan, and that causes some issues too. But Shang is bisexual king, so he's all fine with that. Here, the Shang representative, Sky, he is it finds out that Meilin is a woman pretty soon after. Soon, not it, there's not that much time spent of her trying to hide her gender from at least the love interest. So there's no space and time where he could somehow get a connection with the male version of her. So that was just missing with that. But the moment that he learns that she's a woman, then starts treating her a little different, and she does push back against that. But throughout the entire thing, he still treats her very different, to the point that it feels less interesting. Which is, I've seen this before many different times, and I don't really care about it. The characters are boring. They're all pretty one note, and they're not bad. They're just kind of boring, and I want the characters to be interesting. And Mei Lin sort of was just sort of girl who can fight. Oh my gosh, she can fight, and oh my gosh, she can fight. You know, and Sky Guy. Oh, the one character that was really interesting was the enemy prince, because she ends up getting kidnapped and joining the retinue of like this enemy prince, and he's really cool. I got a queer lens from him, especially because he had like an interesting interaction with Meilin hidden as a boy, and then he finds out that she's a girl, and she uses. There are things in here, plot beats, that I am just bored about or even annoyed about, depending on. But this one character, oh god, what's his name? Lei? I think it was Lei, but he's actually like much more important character in the like world itself, because he's the third prince of the enemy kingdom. His second oldest brother killed his eldest brother, and now things are a little weird with like the country and stuff. But Lei was really cool. The general, the guy who can summon the phoenix, Sima, not that cool, kind of boring also as well. Lei was the only interesting character here because he was a little bit queer with it from the get-go, but then it gets very straight. And I just think that the romance here, there is this love triangle happening between Mei Lin, Sky, and Lei, and I don't really jive with it. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of when I had read. I unfortunately I did read at least the first two, the Akatar books by Sarah J. Maas. I unfortunately did read those two, but that was in high school, before we all knew, before now. I would not touch those books with a 10-foot pole right now. But this love triangle reminded me of that love triangle in Court of Thorn and Roses. And so I was, if not bored, also annoyed at this love triangle. I was like, I don't care about this. I care about the really interesting, horrifying god stuff that's happening. The magic system here was pretty cool, and the sacrifices that Meilin has to do is also pretty cool. And I do have to compare it to the Poppy War, because they're both Chinese inspired worlds, Chinese inspired stories, and it is a woman going into war, being able to summon the power of a god. And the Poppy War does it a lot more interesting than this book. And I don't want to say that this book was inspired by the Poppy War, but very much. I don't I didn't quite enjoy this, and I would have much preferred to keep reading The Poppy War instead. The next book that I read was Death's End by Cixin Liu, the third book in the Remembrance of Earth's Past series that began with the three-body problem. I'm finally able to finish this trilogy, and it was an amazing sci-fi epic trilogy. 5 out of 5 for this book, and I just absolutely adored it. It is much more complex than the first two books. Three-body problem encompassed with, like, I think it was like 2 to 3 years. Dark Forest, pretty long span of time. It was like 100 to like 200 year span, or like 2 to 300 years. This spans like the crisis era, which is the 2010s, mid 2010s, where when third body problem first happens, all the way up until like thousands, millions of years in the future. It is so complex. It's so good. So many things are happening, and it is so well paced as well. It perfectly separates the story of what's happening where, and the world building. It almost felt like a textbook in the way that it is just detailing history in such an interesting and almost detached way. But I just loved hearing about it because I wanted to see what happened because of this thing and that, especially because there's a lot of use in this story and in Dark Forest, the second book, of hibernation of humans going to sleep and waking up decades later, years, almost centuries later. The main character here, we'll get to the main character, but having those jumps in time and then having the narration just detail what changed, what has happened. That is such amazing storytelling, amazing prose, amazing concepts, sci-fi concepts here as well. Loved it so much. The main character, Shenzing, I liked her. I thought she was good. Definitely an improvement from the first two books' main characters. Coincidentally, Liu Ji, the main character in the second book, he's a lot better in this book because he is like 100 years old. Shenzing is more better, but still like kind of a weak character. History would call her and her friend AA best friends. I thought I got lesbian vibes, but then at the very end, there's some like weird that felt pulpy science fiction romance invading here. I would have been perfectly fine if either Shin and AA got together, or if there was no romance whatsoever. Would have been fine with that. But overall, this book took such huge swings that made me terrified, and I absolutely loved what it was trying to do. Every single thing that was shown to me was just amazing, and the four-dimensional stuff, the Trisolarans, war, the Dark Forest. If you know what I'm talking about, Singer. That's a spoiler, but I absolutely adored this book. And like I said, better character writing, and I am so happy that I was able to finish this series. And I will be watching the show at some point on Netflix, because I think the second season is coming out at some point. And from what I heard, the first season encompasses things from Dark Forest as well, but not yet things from Death's End. Not fully sure. We'll see. The next book that I read was Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett, book 3 of the Emily Wilde series. I had a lot of fun with this book, and I think, I was, what is this, third trilogy that I finished this month? Remembrance, Inkheart, and I guess you could say I finished the Marrowbone series so far. Emily Wilde's finally able to finish this trilogy, and I really liked it. It's not a 5 it is a 4.75 out of 5 for me. I really enjoyed it. I was left a little disappointed, but just in terms of expectations, what it was really good. So we follow Emily and Wendell going into Wendell's fairy kingdom and finding a way to establish himself as the king, while his stepmother is disappeared and dying, and also planning against him. And I think this has the best plot out of the 3 books. My issues with like the first 2 books, that the plot wasn't that strong. I think the plot here was really strong because I feel like we're taking a pretty standard type of story of person trying to become king, and putting it into the Fae fantasy realm instead of just fantasy, but like fairy fantasy, but also dealing with Emily herself and her scholarship and how she knows about Fae stuff and how she studies stuff. And so that's a very simple plot, very simple idea, but the way that it was executed was really good. I think also an improvement from the second book, at least, is the side characters were a lot better. Niam, Taryn, and Taryn's husband, he wasn't there that much, but when he was there, he was pretty interesting. And then I forget the stepmother, like the queen that they're fighting against. I forget her name, but she was really good as well. I liked her a lot. Arna. I liked Arna a lot as an antagonist, especially one that was, like, compared to the former antagonists, like the Hidden King in book 1 and book 2 was just random Fae creatures. Arna was a much more intimidating antagonist that could match Emily herself and her scholarship. And so I really liked that aspect. And the side characters is much more improved. Love Niam. Niam? I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, I just didn't really connect much with this story. I feel like my biggest thing is that it is too tied to things that happened in book 1 and not so much in book 2. This is obviously coming off of what happens from book 2, but the problems, solutions, the way that Emily is able to solve the conflict is too tied to the first book, and for me to be that satisfying. Like, I would have preferred if, like, because we saw in book 2, she used stuff from book 1 to help her, and I wished we got from book 2 things to help her with book 3. Book 2 didn't really get much beyond just Snowball, one of the Fae that is like hanging around her, and then like obviously being able to go into Wendell's kingdom, but it was too heavily tied to the first book, and I wanted something new. And there were new stuff here, but it's still, I still wanted less connective tissue, I would say, which I feel like is a little contradictory to how stories tend to be. But from what I've seen of Emily Wilde and Fae stuff, I want new, interesting loopholes, new, interesting interactions. The best part of this series so far, in my mind, happened in the first book when Emily was negotiating with a Fae, and she knew every single right way to speak to that Fae, and the Fae looks at her and says that your brain is a kaleidoscope. And I was like, I love that. Love that moment. I have no moment like that has come back to me in this book. However, we got pretty close to it. Any interactions that she has with Arna, any interactions she has with stories and stuff like that, got pretty close to it. And so I just didn't really connect with it like I wanted to, but it's still a very, very successful book that I have to commend it for. Amazing writing, amazing storytelling, amazing characters. Emily and Wendell feel the most grounded, the most, well, not grounded is the right term, but like they feel the most real here. They feel like real people, despite, you know, Wendell not being a real human, but they felt the most tangible here because they are so flawed as well. Like Wendell felt pretty flawless in the first 2 books. Not that he not that he didn't have any flaws, but here you can definitely see Emily worrying about these flaws and Emily's own flaws coming to the forefront and being an obstacle that she has to overcome. I think that's really good. So yeah, I was really happy with this one. Finally finishing this trilogy. Didn't connect with it emotionally that much. However, like critically, intellectually really good finishing question mark of this trilogy. I feel like there could be a fourth book, but I'm not fully sure. I've not heard anything about that. But yeah, the last book that I read, if I finished, like I said, 4 series, and I'm in the middle of another one. I'm also in the middle of this one. I started another series with Leviathan Wakes by James S. A. Corey, the first book in the Expanse series. And honestly, I totally see the hype. It's a 4.5 out of 5 for me. It wasn't amazing, but I did really, really like it. It had some amazing pacing, specifically because I see there are moments where it's like, oh, months have passed since this, and I'm like, has it really? But yeah, the way that it's paced makes these long spans of time feel condensed, but not like it's jumping forward in crazy ways. So I was really interested in that. James Holden is such a paragon that is so well written because he is like not okay. He's not perfect, but he's written perfectly, and you can see how much of a paragon he is, but is still incredibly flawed and incredibly human. But you have faith in him from the get-go. Like, I knew who Holden was within the first like quarter half of this book. I was like, this is the man that I will stake my life on. Ask anyone that he talks to. Anyone that he talks to in this story loves him. And I I would too. I get it. I get it. And so I really, really like how he's written because he's so humanly amazing. In contrast, Miller, the other point of view. Okay, sorry. The story. Let's talk about the story. It's about Holden, who is becomes a captain of a ship after most of his crew is killed in a casualty of the rampings up of a war between Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt, which are political entities. And so while that's happening, Miller is a detective on the belt on Ceres, who is investigating the disappearance of a woman connected to the beginning of the war. And Miller is a very noir type character that I'm not much of a fan of. In concept, in execution, pretty good, but like just as a character idea, I'm not much of a fan of. He does this thing that you see a lot of times where he sort of like falls in love with the person that he's trying to find. He falls in love with Julie Mao, who is the girl that disappears. Is there an age gap? I'm not fully sure. I think there is, but he does have this thing where he like falls in love with her while he's looking for her. He's never met her, has never talked to her. I mean, he sees her like hallucinating almost and talks to her every once in a while. She talks back to him, and that is a little weird. It's a little iffy. However, it is used eventually at the climax of the story in interesting ways. I wish that it was set up from the get-go that he not only saw just Julie, but also other people in his life. I feel like that could have been much better. Made his weird connection with Julie feel less weird, but it is what it is. The big like sci-fi thing here as well is that there is an alien virus that is turning people into weird zombie aliens. And so when I first came in, I knew there was something about zombie aliens. I knew something, but not that much. Maybe like 10% of it. I was like, okay, there's zombie aliens. There's some sort of thing happening. Dead Space, alien, like franchise, like the Xenomorph type stuff. But in execution, it's more similar in my mind to Annihilation, Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer, and so I was really interested in how that was going to develop, and it did. It developed really interesting, and I'm absolutely floored with how it was used and the immense changes it brought to the world building, quote unquote, universe. You know what I mean? And so I was really this really cool there. Also, have to say, also comparing it to Death's End because these are two sci-fi, or at least Remembrance of Earth's Past. These are two sci-fi epics, space operas, whatever, vastly different proportions, vastly different types of stories, but still sci-fi. And so, like, comparing and contrasting what, like, Three Body Problem, Dark Forest, and Death's End does to Leviathan Wakes, really interesting. I specifically wanted to finish the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy before I started reading the Expanse series. My goal is to finish this series up to what it is published currently by the end of the year. And I think I saw it was 9 books, and I'm starting in the 4th month so that I'll get to 12 months with the 9th book. Ooh, we'll see. We'll see. That's my goal. But I just knew that I did not want to cross streams of Remembrance and Expanse, because this is also a show, right? And I don't want to watch the show until I read the entire thing. So, and honestly, yeah, like Miller's story wasn't that interesting to me. However, the science stuff that he does interact with, like the alien virus stuff, really cool. Holden is just an amazing protagonist. I didn't really get much from his crew. Naomi, good. Amos or Amos, not sure. And Alex are pretty interesting. However, I feel like we need more people to bounce off of. And we had like Miller come in, but Miller didn't really interact much with like Alex, for example, and then maybe a little bit with Amos, a lot with Naomi, and definitely a lot with Holden. But I feel like we need like 1 or 2 more people to round out like the 5-man band, 6-man band, whatever, so that the good aspects of like Alex and Amos can really shine. Because Naomi and Holden are definitely going to have something there in the next few. So this is what I'm hoping to see, because this is a 9-book series that I'm starting. So that's just what I'm hoping. That's what I'm missing from this book, is that these 4 characters didn't really feel... It felt something was missing. Honestly, it is missing, because most of their crew was killed in the very, very beginning. But I'm hoping that it gets definitely much better in the next few books, but still pretty good as is. I'm also thinking of like video games, like I said, Dead Space, and I never played Dead Space though. Was it Left 4 Dead? No, that's something else. And Warhammer. Warhammer had some interesting alien biological stuff. If you played Warhammer, I don't think I played it correctly. Anyways, so yeah, I will be reading 1 book of the Expanse series every month in an attempt to finish the series by the end of the year. So wish me luck for that. Yeah, that is all the books that I read in the month of April. Pretty good, I would say. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 really amazing books. Ink Death, I'm just glad that I'm finally able to finish that. Among the Brave was pretty good, I guess. I don't remember what I ranked it. Did I also have an Animorphs thing? I do not remember if I talked about an Animorphs book in this month or not. Yeah, if you read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them, if you agree with what I thought. Definitely highly recommend Death's End, Remembrance of Earth's Past. Amazing trilogy. Super glad to finish Emily Wilde's, and I'm so excited for Expanse, The Expanse, coming in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to be passionate, and I'll see you later.